Hi YouTube family. Today's video is going to talk about the educational theorist Vygotsky. Now you might be saying to yourself, I graduated from college. Why do I still have to know about Vygotsky? Yeah, the stuff that you learned in college, you will still need it when you are in the classroom. Vygotsky is still important, and me and my colleagues still talk about him, even though we've all been teaching for years. So Vygotsky wrote two books that I'll be referencing in this video. One of the books is Mind in Society, The Development of Higher Psychological Processes, and the other book is Thought and Language. So those are the two books that I will be referencing in this video. And of course, Vygotsky is known for the zone of proximal development, right? It's that sweet spot where it's not too easy for the child, it's not too hard for the child, and that matters. That zone of proximal development really matters, because for some of our kiddos, if it's too easy, they will think it's baby work and be off task. And if it's too hard, they will think that it's out of their league and they won't even try, and then they'll have behaviors. So if you're not in that zone of proximal development, you're going to have behaviors from your child, and they're not going to get the best education. And how can you lead them into independence so they can live their best life if they're not in that zone of proximal development? So Vygotsky is known for his social learning theory. The social learning theory basically states that children learn from one another. They learn in social contexts. And knowing this will help us in our classroom management and our teaching. So when we're making groups, when we're developing lesson, it's important to have group work in there, right? Because you know that you can tell the child how to do something, and they might not understand it, they might not listen. But if a peer can tell the child the same thing, then the child, listens or understands the material better. And that supports the social learning theory, that children learn from one another. Okay, so Vygotsky was a Russian teacher and psychologist, and he first stated that we learn through our interactions and communications with others. He stated that in 1962, and he examined how our social environment influenced the learning process. Also, he wrote that in 1962, and he suggested that learning takes place through interactions with students, peers, teachers, and other experts. And he wrote all of this in 1962. So we as teachers need to know this, because it will help us to create a learning environment that maximizes the learner's ability to interact with their peers through discussion, collaboration, and feedback. And we already talked about group work in a last video. You have the children read a piece of material, and then they can go back and discuss it, and you give the children certain roles, and then they take that information and they share it with the larger group. But after they're reading and they're discussing in their groups, that's where the feedback and the collaboration comes in. So what you're doing is supported by Vygotsky. It's important to know as an educator, the background, right? Because you might be questioned by an administrator and you want to know right off the bat, actually, this supports this. And there's already research on this, and it's from this educational theorist. So also in 1962, Vygotsky said that culture is the primary determining factor for the construction of knowledge. So we as people learn through a cultural lens by interacting with others. What do we learn? We learn rules, we learn skills, and our abilities are all shaped by our culture. So you can develop learning communities, you can develop a community of classroom learners, you can collaborate based on group work, and then you can have discussion-based learning, right? That's all thanks to Vygotsky. So I wanted to tell you in this video about the background of Vygotsky, so you can use it when you're talking to administrators and also to parents. Because as I've said previously, it's not just about the children. You have to, like children, be able to talk effectively to your administrators and to the children's parents. So now you have this background knowledge, or you should have had it in college, but now it's just a refresher that you cannot forget about Vygotsky. So you are armed with the social giants, the social educational giants of the past. So if anybody questions why this group work was done for 30 minutes, you know, you can rebuttal. You can tell the administrator, the parents, the psychologist, the social worker, anybody who comes in your classroom. And you want to be able to tell them in a professional way. And there's nothing more professional than research. So you're telling them everything that you're doing, you're showing them the standard, and you can tell them about the research. And you can even have a conversation about Vygotsky and how you're using scaffolding and the zone of proximal development in your lesson. This will make you look like a highly effective teacher to the other support staff in your school. So what kind of learning can you do in your classroom that supports Vygotsky's theory? The students can work together on a task. The students can create a rubric for an assignment, and they can use that across curriculum, right? The teacher can choose a meaningful and challenging task for the students to work on. And the instructors can manage the students by having them ask questions, right? To really develop learning. Why did that character do this? You really want to, get in there and see. Is it based on his culture? Is his culture different from our culture? So Vygotsky also said that language is the main tool that promotes thinking, develops reasoning, and supports cultural activities like reading and writing. That quote is directly from Vygotsky, and he said that in 1978. Why does that matter to us now? Well, when you're in your classroom and you're having a group discussion and the administrator walks in and you already have your lesson plan because you're a well-prepared teacher, but maybe they want to talk about how there's no permanent product, you can give them a lot of information, how you're following the standard, and also how you're using the theorists to support your education as well. Our videos today had a lot of meat and potatoes in it, a lot of things for you to think about. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment down below if you want to see more videos like this.
Did you find the address?
So again, you might be asking yourself, why is Vygotsky's theory relevant to me today in my classroom? Vygotsky's theory can be very beneficial to you. It can help you plan out your instruction. It can help you think through the knowledge and skills that your students need and are expected to master to determine the order in which you teach those things, thereby making you a highly effective teacher. So when you're using Vygotsky's theory in the classroom, it's important to remember that to be effectively teaching, you have to involve the different ways that children can learn, right? It's important to know the ways in which children learn and the ways in which their brains develop. Effective teaching involves a careful knowledge of the specific students you teach and where they are on their learning journey. Depending on the subject that you teach, you should have a clear idea of what skills and knowledge your students should be able to attain by the end of that semester. And you should have a clear way of getting them there, If not, okay, so ZPD, or the zone of proximal development, and scaffolding. Vygotsky proposed that in order for a student to learn a concept or skill, the concept or skill had to be within the zone of proximal development. The zone of proximal development is a theory used to determine what a student is capable of learning. If a concept or skill is something that a student could do with a little more help from somebody else more knowledgeable, then that concept or skill is something they could perform on their own after the support. This is called scaffolding. Vygotsky called the support the students receive in order to learn scaffolding. So scaffolding, like when you think of painting outside scaffolding. Okay? Why is this important? Vygotsky's theory can be very beneficial to helping teachers plan out the instruction. It helps them to think through the knowledge and skills that the students are expected to master and determine the order in which to teach these things. Some concepts require prior knowledge that the student might not already have. If that's the case, the teacher that knows the concept is currently outside of their zone of proximal development, and it's something the teacher will have to aim for using direct step-by-step instructions, teaching for that child to get that. So you're going to use scaffolding to get the child to the zone of proximal development. How can you put scaffolding to work? The goal is to develop a sequential order in which one concept builds upon another. So how can you put this to work in your classroom? So what do you do first? As with everything, you have to look at the state standards. Always have your lesson plans aligned with whatever state standards you are in. So once you have your state standards, then you're looking at the list of concepts, and you'll need to spend some time considering what concepts the students already have mastered. You can look at some previous assessments, or you can do an assessment when the children come into class. You can do formal or informal assessment in class. So you can determine what level the students are currently on, and that'll help you plan your lessons. You need to determine what concepts students will need to have mastered in order to understand the more advanced concepts you will be teaching them. And what do they need to know by the end of leaving your classroom? And how will scaffolding help you get there? So once the sequential order of what you'll be teaching is in place, you can write your individual lesson plan. And remember about the zone of proximal development. You're going to teach concepts that are within the child's zone of proximal development, but currently a step above what they can do by themselves. Structure the activities so that the students have appropriate scaffolding for practicing the concept. Once they've had a lot of practice with scaffolding, you remove the scaffolding until they mastered that concept on their own. Keep in mind that you might have to tailor this to children that have an IEP, but not that much, because you will just reduce the prompts for the child with an IEP. So teachers, why do you do this? Why do you teach? It's an incredible experience to see the little light bulb go off in the child's mind. You live for that little light bulb, and Vygotsky's scaffolding can help that little light bulb go off in those children's minds, right? It's a beneficial concept to you as an educator. It's a beneficial concept to you as an educator to implement in your classroom to benefit the students in your classroom. Okay? It relies on the way in which students develop cognitively, and it provides a healthy and structured learning environment for them. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. If you want to see more videos about other educational theorists, please leave a comment. If you want to talk about Vygotsky, leave a comment and I can do a second video. Thank you for watching.